Greetings, comrades. I hope this finds you well. So I saw a clip in a Gray Zone kind of interview that they were doing, and one of the clips that they showed was a Fox News, I don't know, I guess town hall or debate of different presidential candidates, and that in particular they're asking Ron DeSantis, the fascist governor of Florida, would he support sending U.S. troops, special forces to Mexico to combat the quote unquote war on drugs? And of course, the warmonger he is, he supports that, doubling down on the failed war on drugs, which again, the war on drugs, you can't have a war on an inanimate object. It's a war on people. And what would a more effective approach be? It would be a more compassionate public health based approach where you either decriminalize or legalize drugs. That would also be a huge form in harm reduction, because people would be getting, if it was legalized, people would be able to get their drug supply and know it's not tainted with something else. And so you wouldn't have, you'd be saving probably tens of thousands of lives each year just from that, as well as not criminalizing drug use, because we need to really look at why people use drugs and alcohol in the first place. And a lot of it can be traced back to trauma, particularly childhood trauma. Maybe they were exposed to domestic violence in the home. Maybe they themselves were physically or emotionally abused or sexually abused by, a family member or somebody else. Perhaps they, experienced some type of trauma or dispossession related to war, or any number of traumas can lead to potential, increased risk or use of, having a drug or alcohol addiction. And in the book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Dr. Gabor Mate, also who happens to be Aaron Mate of the Gray Zone's dad, does a really good job laying out all these different case studies of people who he worked with working in this in downtown Vancouver, working with people who had different addiction problems, and he would get to know them and their stories. And at least all the ones I read, they all had some very serious traumas in their past. And he was working in his capacity as a medical doctor there. So that, taking that approach, that more humane and actual approach that would help people get help and not criminalizing drug use and people who use drugs, would be a lot more effective than wanting to invade another country, you warmongering fascist Ron DeSantis. Again, because that's not going to do anything. It's like the Gray Zone person pointed out, it is a consumption issue. The cartels are responding to the consumption market here in the US, people wanting all these drugs. They're responding to that. Going after them isn't going to change the behavior of these people. And again, if DeSantis and these other people just completely unhinged from reality, frankly, either on purpose, or they're just completely oblivious, you need to look at what type of social conditions would help people get away from their addictions or help them maybe seek help. It's not criminalizing drug use, right? It would be offering more treatment facilities, more compassion, more help, more wraparound services, housing first, right? It's going to be pretty hard to get help for your addiction if you're homeless. If you become homeless and you don't have a addiction problem before, it would be pretty easy, I would imagine, to turn to substances to help numb yourself to the reality that you no longer have stable housing. And that, again, that is a basic need. That is a huge trauma right there. And we have what, 5 or 600,000 homeless people in the United States right now, largely because housing is so expensive and inaccessible for so many people. So maybe making sure everybody has housing, access to mental health care, treatment for addiction when they need it, livable wage, fostering connection and community, and getting rid of, capitalism, because that alienates us from ourselves, from each other, from the natural world. Maybe addressing those issues would be a lot better way to go about it than wanting to invade another country, you absolute idiot, Ron DeSantis. So I'll show the clip. Let's see, here we go. Some Fox News, of course.
As president, would you support sending U.S. Special Forces over the border into Mexico to take out fentanyl labs, to take out drug cartel operations? Would you support that kind of American military use?
Yes, and I will do it on day one. Here's the thing. The cartels are killing.
He also worked at Guantanamo Bay there, so he's just a horrible human all around, right?
Tens of thousands of our fellow citizens. You want to talk about
The cartel is not killing them. The war on drugs, criminalizing drug use, criminalizing people who are using drugs, that is what is killing them. Those going after the cartels, somebody else will just fill that gap, whether it's another cartel or somebody from another country bringing in drugs. That need is going to be met. Okay, so if you're really concerned about the people in the US dying from overdose deaths or just people being addicted in general, you would address the underlying causes, the social decay in the US. You would make sure they have treatment options available. You would make sure they have housing and access to mental health care, etc. Bombing fentanyl facilities or sending US troops into Mexico, it's not going to do fuck all for that, right? It's just playing to the base, I guess, obviously, if they're eating this up, they don't really have a understanding of the problem either.
country in decline? You have the cartels controlling a lot of part of your southern.
Talk about a country in decline. The United States is a country in decline. Get your own shit in order before you start talking shit about other countries, DeSantis. Come on, man. You're fucking ridiculous.
Border. We have to reestablish the rule of law, and we have to defend our people. The president of the
always so the hypocrisy just abounds, right? When any politician from the US, particularly of the corporate parties, obviously, which they basically all are, talk about the rule of law, when the US government does not give a fuck about the rule of law. Look at what they did to Libya. Look at what they did to Iraq. Look at what they did to Afghanistan, Vietnam, Korea. Look at how they have all these illegal sanctions on so many countries: Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Korea, Iran, etc. So shut the fuck up about the rule of law, you absolute fucking hypocrite.
United States has got to use all available powers as commander-in-chief to protect our country and to protect the people. So when they're coming across, yes, we're going to use lethal force.
So they're doubling down on the law and order. We're gonna protect you. We're gonna kill a bunch of people, but it's not actually gonna do anything. But we'll pretend it will. Then we'll just sweep all that stuff under the rug. DeSantis 2024, right? Yeah, brother.
Yes, we reserve the right to operate. How many more tens of thousands are we going to let to die? I am sick. I've met angel moms throughout this country. I met a lady in Texas named Tracy, and her son took one Percocet that was laced with fentanyl, immediately died. That is happening all.
Again, if you're concerned about people dying from overdose because they don't know what they're getting, you would be campaigning on legalizing drugs so people would be able to get a clean drug source. Okay? A kid with the Percocet that was tainted with fentanyl, that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. But of course, he's not going to fucking talk about that. Any type of real harm reduction that would save people's lives. It's all law and order, killing people, drone strikes, lethal force, a bunch of bullshit that's not going to stop people from overdosing here. It just plays to the base. And if you take it at face value, oh yeah, okay, that works, but not if you actually look at the, not as Lenin says, a concrete analysis of the concrete conditions. Because if you do that, you see this is all fucking smoke and mirrors bullshit
across this country because of the poison that they are bringing in. So as president, would I use force? Would I treat them as foreign terrorist organizations? Brother. You're darn right I would.
Hey, Sean Hannity.
You're darn right I would, brother. This is the level of ignorance that we're dealing with here in the United States. And again, the Democrats aren't much better, right? Aren't much better. They've supported the war on drugs as well to varying levels. So just a little reference, but there's a lot of stuff out there that shows this. So the relation between substance use and trauma. So when you really criminalize drug use, you're really adding more, frankly, more trauma to people who've already experienced so much in their lives, which is just really sad and tragic, frankly, when you think about it. Research demonstrates a strong link between exposure to traumatic events and substance use problems. Many people who experience child abuse, criminal attack, disaster, war, other traumatic events turn to alcohol or drugs to help them deal with emotional pain, bad memories, poor sleep, guilt, shame, anxiety, or terror. People with alcohol or drug use problems are more likely to experience traumatic events than those without these problems. And again, like coming in contact with the legal system, like that's fucking traumatic. Nobody wants to go through that shit. Many people find themselves in a vicious cycle, and exposure to traumatic events produces increased alcohol and drug use, which produces new traumatic events, experiences, which leads to even more substance use, and often so forth. Okay, so again, the war on drugs has and will continue to be a complete failure because it's a war on people. We need to take a public health approach, a approach that is based on, compassion and empathy and making sure people have access to resources for if and when they're willing to, get help. We need to make sure people's basic needs are being met, i.e., housing, food, livable wage job, access to mental health care, access to, addiction services, etc. That would, all that money that we're wasting, given to the DEA and Border Patrol, etc., military industrial complex, subsidies to, oil companies, whatever it may be, that money would be much better spent on those things that I just outlined. But of course, you're not going to hear that from a Republican, and you're not going to hear that from a Democrat politician either, because they're all beholden to those same, interests, right? Peace, much love, all power to the people.